Okay, good evening, everyone. Um, I am going to go ahead and call to order the meeting of the City of Bloomington Council. If everyone could stand, if you're able, and for the pledge and remain standing for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic that stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kearns,
Present.
Councilmember Bolin,
Here.
Councilmember Motney,
Here.
Councilmember Dannenberger,
Present.
Councilmember Becker,
Here.
Councilmember Hendricks,
Present.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Lee,
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler,
Here.
Mayor Millwamboy.
Here. We're going to move on to recognition and appointments, and we're going to start with a proclamation for Health for Humanity Yoga Awareness period, as requested by the Administration Department. And I think we have Yogesh to come and accept the proclamation. So if you want to stand right there, and then I will read the, stand at the podium. I'll read the proclamation and then give you an opportunity for a few words.
Mhm.
And then you can come up to receive the proclamation. And then we may even be able to snap a picture together,
Sure.
if
Sure.
you would mind.
Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
awesome. So I'll read it first and then give you a chance to speak. So this is a proclamation recognition of the Health for Humanity Yogathon organized by Hindu Swayamsevak. Is it?
Yep.
Okay, man, I'm awesome. Uh, And this is for the 13th to the 28th of January 2024. Whereas yoga is an ancient Hindu practice developed thousands of years ago in the Indian subcontinent for maintaining spiritual, mental, and physical well-being. And whereas Surya Namaskar, which is a sun salutation, is a traditional yogic practice combining a sequence of postures with breathing exercises that provides the key health benefits of yoga in a very succinct package. And whereas Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, or HSS, is a nonprofit charitable organization with over 235 branches in 164 cities and 34 states, including Illinois, through which it conducts a Hindu values education program for the Hindu families and community service activities such as food drives, providing hot meals to shelters and others Siwa service activities in several cities across the USA. And whereas HSS is conducting the 19th consecutive annual awareness program, Health for Humanity, which is a nationwide effort to promote friendship, mutual understanding, and good health among multicultural and diverse members of the community. And whereas yoga enthusiasts, yoga studios, local schools, and other community organizations are participating in HSS Health for Humanity Yogathon. And whereas the Health for Humanity program will be conducted January 13th through 2024, and will be free and open to all people for learning a unique set of yoga postures called Surya Namaskar. Yoga enthusiasts and local organizations are participating in this event. Now, therefore, I, Mboka Malambwe, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, on behalf of Bloomington City Council, do hereby proclaim January 13th through the 28th, 2024, as Health for Humanity Yoga Awareness Period. Thank you. Now, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
So, namaste everyone. My
Namaste.
name is Yogesh, representing Hindu Swayan Sevak Sangha, also called HSS, to receive the proclamation for the event called Yogathon, which we did in the last month for almost 15 days. I will give the brief description of the event. So, this event is, we have been doing this event across the United States since last 17 years. And what we do in the yoga in this 15 days, we do and we teach different uh, yoga postures from standing, laying down, and sitting, regulated breathing cycles, then meditation, and then different techniques of warm up and sun salutation. And the aim of this event is to actually get the benefit to people to get the benefit of this yoga postures, and which is very helpful for individuals to be healthy mentally and physically, so that they can actively and collaboratively work in their day-to-day life, so that they can grow the society with their characteristics. Uh, and also I would like to say a few things, like I think as per the United States Yoga Institutes, in the last decade, there is almost 50% increase in the yoga teachers across the United States, and almost 1 out of 3 person has done yoga in some or other way. So with this, I would like to thank you, City of Bloomington, for giving us the proclamation for this one. And we will like everyone to please participate in this event, since this is open to everyone, and get the benefit of yoga, which is one of the ancient tradition back in India, almost 5,000-year-old. So thank you and dhanyavad everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to come up for the proclamation? Okay. The next recognition is a recognition for Central Illinois Woodworkers Club for contribution of time and skills to the Train Project and Empire Junction as requested by the Parks and Recreation Department. And I am going to turn it over to Dave Lamb, Parks and Recreation Department Assistant Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Assistant City Manager Jurgens, Council. Thank you for having us here tonight. Tonight is kind of a special thing, and we do have a little presentation for you. But I wanted to acknowledge the hard work that the Central Illinois Woodworkers Club did, and the contribution of time, labor, and skill that they donated to the city. President of the club there is Todd. The other members here are Steve, Tom, Marty, Toby, and Joe. And they worked diligently on this pretty neat project, and they built a train. This train's at Empire Junction Park. It's along Constitution Trail, one of our linear parks along the trail that used to be part of the old Norfolk Southern rail line years ago, was converted over to trail during the Rails to Trails projects in the late 80s, I believe. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure they were properly recognized. If you don't mind standing up, guys, I'd appreciate that. And we've got a short little presentation. Yeah. I do want to let Todd come up for a minute or two, but I did want to recognize Mose Ricky also did some work on this with me before he bailed on us and went over to another department. So anyway, he kind of got this going with me and Eric here. So anyway, I do want to recognize that they came to us. We didn't come to them. They wanted this. They asked for this, and we hope they continue to want to work with the city. So anyway, Todd, if you don't mind coming up for a couple words, and then you guys could key up that presentation.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the Parks Department and everyone in it who was very supportive of this. One of our members, Marty back here, had the idea of putting something in the Empire Junction Park that would be attractive and to utilize the park in maybe a way that hadn't been done before. So she came up with a lot of ideas and ran them past a club. And then we eventually came to the Parks Department and ran a concept of a train past the club. Marty, on her own, built a scale model of what's actually at the park today. We took that scale model, and another one of our members spent over 100 hours converting that concept design into CAD drawings that we could present to the Parks Department, and along with an Excel budget of what we thought it might cost in terms of material. The Parks Department was wonderful. They green lighted everything, were very supportive for us, purchased the materials, and then we started building the train. We had 12, and we're not a big club. We've been around for several decades, but we're only about 25 members strong. We had half the club, 12 members involved in building this. They could find time in their schedules to do it. Those 12 people invested over 645 hours of their time, not to mention their expertise and their equipment, woodworking equipment, to build the train cars that you see at Empire Junction, a locomotive and a coal tender. Our concept is this could be the first two of maybe many cars, depending on what the city and the Parks Department would like to see happen next. But our concept that we brought to the Parks Department was building 1 or 2 cars a year for several years until we in the city ran out of ideas. And so we've undertaken that. It's worked out very, very well. One of our members, I think I mentioned, invested over 100 hours developing the CAD drawings that enable us to go forward and do this. We're excited to have gotten it accomplished. Just this past Wednesday morning, we've installed the final features, a light that lights up at night. And there's also a working train whistle. When you're standing in the locomotive and you press down on that level, you will hear a train whistle. And we've actually entombed the train whistle inside the boiler of the locomotive because we feared it would be too loud for the neighbors living close by if we didn't muffle the sound a bit. But when you're standing in there and pressing on that lever, and you should do it, it's pretty neat. And we think it'll be very attractive to kids, and they will enjoy it very much. So I won't speak anymore. I've taken enough of your time already, but I want to thank the Parks Department greatly for accepting and embracing the concept and then making it happen in terms of support for our group. We have members in Bloomington, in Normal, and the surrounding communities. I said, we're not a small club, or we're a small club, but we're looking to grow. I think you already have perhaps been given a brochure. If you have somebody who's a woodworker and like to learn more about our club and maybe participate, we'd love it. Our next meeting is next Monday night at the Normal Township Hall. So again, to the city and to the Parks Department, thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome. I saw a number. Was that a number 23? Is that for Michael Jordan or? Okay. Awesome. Very nice. Well, I do have a proclamation for you here, which I will read. Whereas the city of Bloomington is proud of its history and wishes to recognize those who made contributions to acknowledge the past. And whereas the Central Illinois Woodworkers approached the Parks and Recreation Department with the idea of a train exhibit piece for Empire Junction Park, which follows the history of the area well, as Empire Junction Park is along a portion of Constitution Trail that was converted from a rail line. And whereas the Parks and Recreation Department work with the Central Illinois Woodworkers Club to provide the city and park users with a train exhibit piece at the park. And whereas the city of Bloomington wishes to recognize the exemplary craftsmanship of the train project, And whereas the train project fosters creativity and interest in Bloomington's rich heritage from all ages, now therefore, I, Mboka Malambwe, Mayor of Bloomington, Illinois, do hereby recognize the Central Illinois Woodworkers for the train project at Empire Junction Park. Thank you very much. Would you like to come up? I can tell you're a woodworker. You have a firm handshake. And thank you, Marty, as well, for inspiring this project. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Let's see. So the next item is recognition of board and commission appointments as requested by the administration department. As I understand it, we have a couple of people who are present. I think Surinder. Okay, thank you. Appointed to Welcoming America Commission. Did I take this part? This was supposed to be yours, right? Yeah, usually. Okay. All right. And then I believe, do we have Mark Adams here? Okay. So please stand so everybody can see you. Thank you. Thank you both very much. And I think we have also, but not here, we have Adinda Akmal for the same, for the Welcoming America Commission. Levi Sturgeon for Welcoming America Commission, and Heather Witt for Welcoming America Commission, Tylen Smith for Public Safety and Community Relations Board. So thank you to all of you for devoting your time and to to the work that the city does. We would definitely appreciate it. We realize that time is precious. So we definitely appreciate what you're doing for the city and the community. I think we are now going into public hearings. We have a public hearing on the program year 2024 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. And I'm going to go ahead and call to order this public hearing, and the time is 6:19. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to William Bessler for and Melissa Hahn for an initial presentation, and then we'll hear from. Well, actually, I'm supposed to pass it off to Jeff. Are you?
Directly to them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Deputy City Manager. Tonight is the public hearing for the program year 2024 CDBG Annual Action Plan, which as proposed would invest over $800,000 in our community. Next slide, please. The CDBG program provides annual grants on a formula basis to states, cities, and counties to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing and a suitable living environment, and by expanding economic opportunities, principally for low to moderate income persons. There are three national objectives that CDBG funding must meet: benefit low to moderate income persons, prevent or eliminate slum and blight conditions, or meet urgent community needs. For the city, nearly all non-administrative funds go towards the benefit of low to moderate income residents and the low to moderate income national objective. The city is an entitlement grantee of these funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Regulations that govern CDBG funding are found in 24 CFR Part 570. Next slide, please. The 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan present high-level goals that are determined through an extensive public engagement process in 2019 that developed the plan. Consolidated plans are the framework for CDBG activities over a 5-year period, and you can see the goals from the 2020 2024 consolidated plan there. Next slide, please. Program year 2024 is the 50th year of CDBG funding for the city. The annual action plan is created to determine the annual projects that will be undertaken to achieve goals within the consolidated plan. This annual action plan is the fifth and final year of the 2020 to 2024 consolidated plan that council approved in 2020. Next slide, please. Partner program applications represent our public service, public facility, and public infrastructure projects. Applications were due in January of 2024. The RFP was released in November of 2023. We received 12 applications for funding. Awarded organizations are subrecipients of the city's CDBG funds. The partner program is competitive, and applications are evaluated through the standardized process outlined in the request for proposal. Next slide, please. First, the preservation of existing affordable housing stock goal. This will support our housing rehabilitation and accessibility program for program year 2024. As you can see there, it's nearly $400,000. We expect 12 housing rehabilitation projects to be completed in this program year with this funding. For the elimination of slum and blight conditions, we expect 1 demolition project to be completed within the program year. Next slide, please. Public service funding goes to 4 organizations in the proposed annual action plan. First, to Home Sweet Home Ministries for homeless street outreach at $34,000. Partners for Community and the Recycling Furniture for Families program is slated to receive $5,000. The West Bloomington Revitalization Project is slated to receive $18,000 for community operations for neighborhood revitalization. And KTB Financial will receive $26,000 for financial services. Public service funding is capped at 15% of the city's annual allocation from HUD. Next slide, please. Providing quality service in facilities, or more commonly known as our Public Facility and Infrastructure Program. Home Sweet Home Ministries will receive a little over $13,000 for shelter improvements in their homeless shelter. The City of Bloomington Public Works Department will receive $98,000 for South Central sidewalk improvements. Lifelong Access, formerly known as Mark First, will receive $30,000 for housing rehabilitation for supportive housing. And the Housing Authority of the City of Bloomington will receive $55,000 for Holton Home modernizations related to playground equipment. Next slide, please. Finally, administering the CDBG program effectively and proficiently. This does include our administrative programs. Prairie State Legal Services will again be funded with their Fair Housing Program at $16,000. The Housing Authority of the City of Bloomington will be provided $9,000 for Section 3 training. And the McLean County Regional Planning Commission will receive $36,000 for housing and community planning, which does include the Regional Housing Initiative. Administrative activities are capped at 20% of the city's annual allocation, thus making the total program year 2024 community investment $800,296. Next slide, please. Revenues for this program year are expected to be $554,724 for the annual allocation. This is a 4-year estimate based off of previous allocations. HUD has not released the annual allocation before the plan was developed and presented for public comment. Once HUD does release the annual allocation, we will update the annual action plan and file with HUD. Program income from our housing rehabilitation program loans will be included in revenues for this year, as well as prior year resources, which represent unspent funds from previous grant years. Next slide, please. Public comment is available until February 25th. As I noted earlier, potential changes will result from the annual allocation being provided from HUD. This will include revenue adjustments, and potentially projected goal expenses may need to be adjusted depending on that allocation. The next step would be consideration and action by City Council to approve the filing of the annual action plan. HUD will then review and approve the annual action plan and then release funding to the city. Next slide, please. And there is the contact information for myself and grant specialist Joni Gerard. Members of the public can direct public comments to myself or Joni. And I will take your questions.
Okay. Well, I think we are supposed to go to public input at this time. So we will ask anybody from the public if they would like to come forward. Will only be allowed to speak only once. And we ask that you keep your remarks reasonably short so that we can get through everyone that desires to speak. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody who was registered? Okay. All right, then we're going to move on then. At this time, we'd like to ask council members if they have any questions. Oh, Councilmember Ward?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Can you say anything about what neighborhoods the 12 rehabs are in? And are those private homes, single family? What, can you tell us more about that?
Single-family homes, it's a citywide eligible program that's continually open. We don't have exact addresses at this point in time because folks can apply, but everyone within the city is eligible, assuming they meet the eligibility parameters of the program.
So those haven't already been decided
They have
yet?
not.
Okay.
We do
and
have a
then-
wait list, but those projects have not been moved forward to the point of being selected for an activity.
And then have you identified the demolition?
No, we have not. That will come from developments within the program year, and if any demolitions are ordered by court.
Okay. And then one last question. So this is the last year of this cycle. When will we be having conversation about the next cycle and what kind of context will that take?
Sure. So the city, the town, and the Regional Planning Commission have already started planning for the next consolidated plan. Public engagement will begin in April. So you'll be hearing from us soon about the development of the next plan. And like I said, it will involve a significant public engagement through approximately a 4 to 6 month period.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay.
I have one.
Oh, Councilmember Kearns?
I just wonder, because nobody came to talk tonight, but what kind of public comments do you get at, because it's still open, people can still submit their comments. Do you have like a number or kind of how that works?
They
What you
can
see.
just email or give us a call. Written comments are preferred. It makes it a little easier to transcribe and get it over to HUD and to
Okay.
incorporate with the plan.
Do you have any information on how many comments you normally get?
I don't remember the public comment number for the annual action plan from last year. We typically receive, I would say, 1 to 2, depending on the public hearing, though.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no other requests for comments, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And the time is 6:30. And we're going to move on to item B, public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant Citizen Participation, right? Plan as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. And we are going to go ahead and call to order this hearing at 6:30 and turn it over to, okay, back to William and Melissa.
Thank you. So this is really the first step in the next consolidated plan. We're revising our citizen participation plan. Next slide, please. The city is required by law to adopt a citizen participation plan that contains the policies, procedures for stakeholder consultation, public engagement, and the development of the 5-year consolidated plan, annual action plans, and the CAPER reports. Regulations can be found in 24 CFR 91.105. Next slide, please. To revise the citizen participation plan, we partnered with the town of Normal, which is also an entitlement community for CDBG funding, and the McLean County Regional Planning Commission and the Housing Authority of the City of Bloomington. The current citizen participation plan was implemented in 2018 and amended in 2020. The steering committee for the 2025, the 2029 CDBG Consolidated Plan determined that this revision would be a beneficial step before the public engagement process for that next consolidated plan began in April of this year. Next slide, please. Summary of key revisions. Applicable federal regulation citations were added to sections of the plan for the public to easily see regulatory requirements. There is an increase in the number of days for a public hearing notice from 14 to 15 calendar days. Addition of language regarding virtual public hearings if unforeseen and unpreventable events render in-person public gatherings impossible or inadvisable, such as a natural disaster or public health emergency. Disaster response and recovery language was added in the event CDBG funds become available for that purpose. And additional language was added to respond to waivers from HUD that may impact the citizen participation plan. Next slide, please. Public comment for this plan is available until February 24th, and the contact information is there below. Members of the public can contact myself or grant specialist Joni Gerard if they would like to comment on the citizen participation plan revision.
Okay, awesome. I am anticipating that there will be a lot of questions about this. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to turn it over for public input. And Madam Clerk, do we have anybody that would?
We didn't have
Register?
anybody register.
Okay. All right. So then I ask council members if you have any input.
I
Councilmember
do.
Gunn?
I really liked the section that talked about outreach techniques and that you shall implement a range of public engagement and stakeholder consultation methods such as focus groups, key informant interviews, public meetings, public hearings, electronic and paper-based surveys, social media campaigns, and other methods to maximize input from residents and stakeholder groups. And then in the other sections, it just talks about like, we're gonna put a notice in the newspaper. So I guess, to me, that there seems to be like some kind of, that doesn't match up. So I guess if you could maybe talk about that. And then the other part that I have is, like scrolling through, as an example, the city's Facebook page, there's different ways that different departments have, tried to make information sharing engaging. Like I know you probably don't have the same budget for the streetscape. You can't create a whole website and all that kind of stuff, but maybe if it's not just a block text paragraph, like maybe some more bullet points, some icons, something that is going to help, even if that's like required. I get like if there's like a legal element, like it has to say certain words, but then maybe add a picture of something that kind of piques people's interest, because it's so easy just to, I know that's just one aspect and element of what you're doing. So giving notice about these opportunities, hopefully it's going to correspond more with that paragraph of your outreach activities and more than just, and then we threw it in the paragraph. I don't mean to say it dismissive in that way, sorry.
Yeah, so I think with each time we launch an annual action plan or the CAPER or in the new consolidated plan public engagement process, we will go through a variety of outreach methods that will include social media, contact with stakeholders, and other forms of communication. What I would say is why it wasn't as descriptive within the plan is because it's a 5-year window that this will likely be in place, and a lot of things can change in methods of communication. So it was kept intentionally vague to ensure that there were flexibility. The reason why the public hearing notice was very specific is tied to those regulations from the federal government, and ensuring that there is a specific window of time that is available for the public. But yes, we will engage with a variety of channels over the course of the next consolidated plan public engagement and with anything else related to CDBG.
Okay, Councilmember Ward?
I'm just curious to know how similar that process is to what is done with the community health needs assessment. process that is pretty vigorous and creative in this community and collaborative in the sense that that the different healthcare institutions have a different timeline from the county, and yet they've all come together and managed to cooperate and one group, I can't remember which, has even said we'll do it more often than we need to because we want to collaborate together. And I just wonder if there's any similarity in the process we use compared to that, or any opportunity for similarity?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities to that process. This citizen participation plan specifically, the town of Normal will be going through a very similar process because we adopted the same plan. We involve a lot of stakeholders in the consolidated planning process. There would be public outreach events. We'll do public hearings, public forums, connecting with nonprofits to ensure that the surveys that are developed reach the folks that they serve. So it will be a very collaborative process with a lot of our partners, special call outs to the Regional Planning Commission and the Housing Authority of the City of Bloomington as main partners in the effort that will be coming up.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bolin?
I just want to make a comment. I can vouch for the public outreach with this plan, which was put into place in 2020. And I'm very satisfied because you did have small group discussion, kind of roundtable or breakout sessions and everything. So it's a good community outreach. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other requests for comments, I'm gonna go ahead and close the hearing at 6:38 and 30 seconds. Okay, thank you both. And now we're gonna move on to public or regular public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do. We have 2 in person and 1 emailed.
Okay, thank you. Oh, public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time seized. Thank you.
So our 1 emailed public comment that was provided to council was from Lola Gretton. And we have 2 in-person registrations, and that's first we'll have Max Danansky.
Yes.
Yes, you can step up to the podium.
I think the last one would have been in Normal, but so anyway, my name is Max Danoski, as identified. From about 2021 until Sunday, I was the owner of Shockwave Skateboards in Normal, Illinois. But to where it becomes a Bloomington City issue, the biggest challenge that I faced that led to the closure of my business was the delays with the pool led to delays with the skate park, which also led to a very small budget by the time anything eventually was accomplished. So the one that was recently put in O'Neill Park is nice, but it's about half the size as the previous one was. And the demand then was about 20 to 30 people enjoying the park safely at the same time. The size that it accommodates now really only allows for about 2 people, and they have to wait their turn. So it gets pretty congested pretty quickly. In between where the skate park is now and what I was led to believe will be basketball courts, right next to where the tennis courts used to be, there's plenty of room in between and around that is currently just mud. It would be ample space to make the skate park not only better and more attractive for people to come to, but just generally safer for everybody to use all at the same time. Not a humongous project, but even just a little bit of addition to it would make it much better to use for the community. In about, I think, 3 days, the town of Normal is holding a community input meeting for a project that will see the Fairview Skate Park renovated as well. I was told they hope to achieve this by November, but it sounded like a pretty large scale project. So I didn't want the efforts up to this point to kind of get overshadowed by what will be, sounds like a much bigger scale project, which would kind of leave the, O'Neill one much underutilized. So I think, like I said, by just adding a little bit more to it, I know a lot of people within the community, if submitting an old school petition is the way to go, getting people to come to these kind of meetings is the way to go. Whatever I can do to show you guys that there is kind of a tremendous amount of support for this. Love to be able to make that happen before, I just don't want it to get turned into landscaping and then it just be kind of a park the same size as Gibson City, about town of less than 5,000, but appreciate it.
Thank you. Next.
Next, we have Scott Steinling.
That's Steinling, Ward 5. My concern is that the streets and sidewalks keep deteriorating. I've seen people that have been trying to walk on the sidewalks. I've seen them go out and try the streets. I've seen them go back to their houses. This city is, they've always got money to do everything else, but they don't have time to keep up with the infrastructure. In certain places, the curb line is level with the grass. And I'm embarrassed for people to see the city like that. I mean, as you come into the city, it's nothing to see potholes all over Bloomington, normal. The residential areas, you don't, all around City Hall, the government center, you always see the ADA sidewalks. You get into the real world, they're not there. One time I saw somebody two blocks down with their junior high granddaughter in a wheelchair lifting it up over the curb. I said, I would be you, I'd call at that time the public works director. And she must have done it because the city was out there the next morning, put that in. They knew they're in violation. That ADA law was in effect in 1990, and they're still not ADA accessible, all of them. They sure are on City Hall, the government center, any city building. They're all ADA accessible. But you get into the real world, I'd invite you, any of you, to take a trip out there, and you'll see what I'm talking about. The city, their fireworks display is, you'd cancel that and put that money into the roads and the sidewalks, you'd see an improvement. You really would. But I realize the city's got all kinds of money, but they still got a federal debt. I'd encourage you to come out and take a look around, and it'd be an eye opener. That's all I've got for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to the consent agenda. And is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion
Second.
by Councilmember Bullen, second by Councilmember Ward. And I believe we are going to attempt to vote electronically. All right, success is a beautiful thing. So the motion passes. There are no nays to announce. And now we're going to move on to the regular agenda with item 9A, which is consideration and action on a resolution approving the fiscal year 2025 John M. Scott Healthcare Trust Category 2 grant awards and programmatic agreements in the amount of $463,638.91 as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. And I am going to turn it over to Deputy City Manager Jurgens.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the council is aware, you serve as the trustee for the John M. Scott Healthcare Trust. This was reorganized a few years ago, restructured a little bit. City staff now is hired by the trust to help with some of the reporting and with some of the grant functionality. And so tonight, as part of your duty as trustee, you'll be hearing this report and approving this distribution of the programmatic awards.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and Deputy City Manager. Tonight, the John M. Scott Healthcare Commission will present an investment of over $450,000 towards healthcare needs of under-resourced community members. I want to take a moment to thank everyone involved in this year's process, especially the leadership of Commission Executive Officers Kiana Wilkinson, Angela Chazinski, Faley Sebastian, and Catherine Crockett. I also want to thank the entire commission and the many community volunteers that volunteered many hours of hard work over the last few months. A special thank you to our grant specialist, Joni Gerard, for her work with the commission as well. With that, I will turn it over to Commission Chairperson Kiana Wilkinson to present this year's Category 2 investment.
Thank you, William. Hello, Mayor, Council, City of Bloomington. Thank you for having me. All righty, John M. Scott Healthcare Trust, Category 2 grant recommendations. Excuse me. Thank you. So this year we did Category 2 grants, Community Health Priority Grants. They generally have annual commitments split between capital and program requests. So the grant funds must serve McLean County residents with annual household incomes at or below 185% federal poverty level. Next slide, please. So this is what happened with our funding process last fall. So we had RFP September 2023. We had a community information session held in September as well. Applications were open from I get that mixed up, August, November, September, but September through October. And then we had 4 meetings to evaluate those applications. We met from November to December this past year. And then we approved the fiscal year 2025 recommendations on December 20th. Next slide, please. So for Category 2 capital grants, there was about $169,345 requested for 3 applications. And then for Category 2 program, we had about $1 million, and then 20 applications were received. So total aggregate were about $1.2 million. Next slide, please. So our recommendations break down. So we had about $75,000 for Category 2 capital improvement grants, plus Category 2 program grants, $388,638.91, for a total of $463,638.91. Next slide, please. So grant fund activities address 3 priorities in the current CHIP plan, or Community Health Improvement Plan. So we're looking for access to care, healthy eating, active living, and then behavioral, including mental health and substance abuse. So organizations funded also focus on those social determinants of health in our community to help with health disparities. So this funding, we feel that it represents the spirit of John M. Scott. It serves our under-resourced community members and helps to create a more equitable community. Great to live in Bloomington. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Okay, any questions from council? Okay,
I've got one.
oh, okay, Councilmember Ward.
Can you tell us anything about what the Promise Council Student Healthcare Grant is about?
Let me take a look at my notes. Let's see. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, so the Promise Council
Mhm.
provides grants to students who have healthcare needs that can't be met by insurance or underinsured or not insured at all. So that is really helpful for for those students. Obviously, if they're facing health issues in the classroom, they're not able to focus. So the Promise Council does a lot of great work within the community to make sure that kids get the healthcare that they need.
Thank you.
There's so many applications. It was, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, none. Well, thank you both very much. Is there a motion to? Motion by Councilmember Crumpler,
Second.
second by Councilmember Bolin. And we're going electronic. Okay, the item passes, no nays to announce. So thank you both, and thank you, William, for all the work that the staff has done. But Kiana, thank you to the commission for providing these grants that meet quite a few needs in the community. So really appreciate it. We are going to move to item 9B, a presentation of the FY 2025 budget preview as requested by the Finance Department. And I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Manager for an initial remarks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And tonight I want to start by just saying that we've got, from our administration, we've got a lot of pride in our finance department. They do a great job in crafting the budget. They basically get done with one budget cycle, rest a very short time, and then start the next budget cycle. But they craft it very strategically with the input and the working relationship of all the other city departments. And taking into account the diverse needs that the city has. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Finance Director, Scott Rathbun, to run us through the FY 2025 budget.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager, Mayor, Council. This is a preview, although we do have the budget balance, it is still subject to change. This is the first of 5 presentations before we get to adoption. So we're going to be going over these numbers quite a bit and kind of homing in on some of the details as we progress through the budget cycle. So tonight we'll be talking about some of the the totals, the variances, giving some details, some of the moving parts, but it is a budget that emphasizes public safety, roads, dependable infrastructure, clean water has been a subject that's been discussed very thoroughly lately. And public well-being, I'll say as well, money being spent on parks, our cultural arts with the BCPA, keeping that facility intact, trying to prevent further deterioration, of a piece of artwork basically in our downtown here. So a couple of comments just on the process. Deputy City Manager Jurgens referred to it. It's quite extensive. We asked the departments to provide documentation on every line of the budget. I refer to it as a line item budget. If you Google budget processes or types, you're going to see about 4 to 5 different kinds. It probably mostly resembles a zero budget where, you start from scratch every year. Now, we do provide the departments their history. That's part of what our review and finance is all about too. We show them 4 years of actuals, calculated a 4-year average. They put in the current year's projection for us. What are you going to spend in the current year budget? And then they put in their ask for the coming year and they document any material changes. Some of the larger accounts, we have account line items within police and IT. They detail down to the dollar for us. And part of the process, we met with admin and all the department heads, and we went through the larger budgets on a variance basis and discussed all the material variances from year to year. There's an expectation from the city manager and admin in general, I'm going to just change the numbers, but if you need 3, don't ask for 5, and that's part of the process where we're reviewing and kind of wringing out each account. Why do you need that? What's the change? And it's documented within our budget process. So, we want to do our best to be good stewards of the taxpayers' funds and acknowledge, like Deputy City Manager Jurgen said, that there are competing interests as to, where these budget dollars should go. So not everyone's going to be in agreement, but we're doing the best, especially utilizing the expertise of our department heads, what sewers need fixed, which roads need addressed, et cetera. So big intro there. So next slide, please. So big intro, a big budget. So this is the largest budget the city has put forward, $331.7 million. That's a $41.5 million increase over prior year. I use the same scenario pretty much every year. I roll down to the increase in capital projects because those can vary dramatically. So our increase in capital projects versus FY24 is 18.8 million. So of that 41.5, about $19 million is an increase just in capital projects. So that leaves about 22.7 million. Well, everyone's heard, there's been a lot of inflation over the last 2 years. Recently, it's come down, the 3 to 4% range. I think it's even a little under 3% now, but just using 4%, acknowledging that it was higher than that previously, 4% inflation on a 330 million or 200, I'm going to say last year's budget was 290 million, or this year's, excuse me, FY24. That's about $12 million of just general increases for explanation of the difference between an $19 million increase in capital projects and a $42 million increase overall. And then this year, we have a lot of equipment needs. We've been delaying some we've had to delay because we couldn't get it. And we're advancing forward some equipment purchases too. Fire, they have an engine and 2 ambulances in their budget that would not have been budgeted until future years. But because of the lead time on those builds over a year, 2 years in some instances, we're moving $2.8 million forward into FY25 that would have been pushed out into the coming year. So that's about 5 million. And then as we discussed during the levy time, pensions have gone up 2.4 million over the prior year. So that's kind of the big material changes making up that 41.5 million. And then just to provide some context, and I'm going to do this at the end, and this is not to pick on public safety, but I think that's a primary concern of all of our residents. Being able to rely on the police department if you need them, being able to rely on the fire department if you need them. Our public safety total budget, including pensions, so including the pension side of things, which we're doing a little bit of catch up, is $70 million. So that's 21% of our total budget is public safety. And then if you add in capital projects of 88.5, that's 158, almost $159 million of the $330 million. That's for public safety and just projects. Just those 2 categories make up about 49% of the total citywide budget. Our general fund balance, this is a big discussion point. What are we doing with our reserves? What are our reserves going to be? We're projecting at the end of FY25, given our projections for 24, that we're going to be in the low $40 million range. Again, pending larger discussions related to downtown streetscape, a public works campus, fire stations, the buildings of those, et cetera, to utilize those reserves. And then final line on this exhibit, should check my watch before I start, is cash for equipment. So that's been a strategic initiative we've had where, borrowing for projects, long-term, 20-year, 30 years, the useful life of those projects, that's common practice, accepted standards, but we really don't want to borrow for our rolling stock, year-to-year equipment. So we've been trying to wean ourselves off of debt related to that. So 13.4 million citywide for cash for equipment. General fund, 100% cash for equipment, 9.5 million. And that includes paying cash for those the fire truck and the 2 ambulances that we're kind of pulling forward into the next year budgets. Next slide, please. This exhibit was developed a couple of years ago. It's not perfect by any means, but it's to try to provide some context about our growth. So our total citywide budget is in the top line. And then we're trying to come down to a net operating. So we're backing off the capital projects, which can really vary from year to year. For example, a couple of years ago, we had, the library expansion and O'Neill Pool were budgeted. And then we have some strategic additions related to the cash that we paid through to McLean County Health as part of our home rule. And then non-recurring We tried not to use that non-recurring line too much, but essentially what this shows is that netting down from our total citywide budget, we've been averaging about an annualized growth of about 4%, a little under 4% since 2016. Councilmember Motney asked about our payroll growth. I don't have it on this exhibit yet, but I wanted to speak to it. So in 2016, we budgeted $64.3 million in salary and benefits, not including public safety pensions. Those do not get captured in salary and benefits. They're part of intergovernmental expense. We were 64.3 million. We're at 87.2 million for 2025. So that's about 3%, 3.6% annualized growth in salary and benefits since 2016. Next slide, please. So how to piece together this $330 million from an activity standpoint? We'll work through this more in the coming meetings, but this is our citywide by fund. Now we have 29 funds, so some of the funds are consolidated. We have multiple insurance, internal service funds. That's the second one from the bottom. We have multiple debt service funds. But you can see, in that dollar change column, the 41.5 million that we referenced in the highlight slide increase. The biggest increase is in our general fund. We do have 5.4 million in comp increase. That's related to, annual performance reviews, union contracts, and we have added staff, and again, not to pick on public safety, but we are approving 9 positions for public safety for FY25, 5 sworn PD, 2 civilians for PD, and then 2 training officers for the fire department related to their change and how they're hiring related to EMTs and not needing that certification before they're hired to the city. So more training is going to be needed internally. 6.2 million for state motor fuel tax, delaying those 2 large projects. The costs keep going up, and there's some additional expenditures in there as well. The library actually came down because that was a little bit of an anomaly. One of their grants related to the project there, the cash came in FY24, and we had it as a contribution to reserves, and that's not reflected this year. So it's a way we budget those contributions to reserves, savings. We show it as an expense. That's kind of an anomaly of the way we budget, but that's the way we've been doing it here at the city. The water fund, I'm going to slide down, 13.8 million. So we have a Locust Colton Phase 8 that's going to hit a water, sewer, and storm. That's a majority of the increase for sewer and storm. But the water fund is also beginning their large distribution plan project in the form of adding a water tower this coming year for about 11.5 million. And then last, I'll comment on the internal insurance service funds. One thing I'd like to remind council and the community is we do have some, the way transfers work in our budget, it tends to gross up our budget because all the departments are charged their health premiums, and then we pay those health premiums out of the internal insurance funds down at the bottom. It's not in the bottom accounting wise, but the way we're depicting it here. So we have expense here, a revenue down in these funds, and then we have an expense down in these funds where we pay those insurance companies. And so anytime we have an increase in insurance premiums, which we have every year, it shows kind of like a doubling within our budget. Next slide, please. Major tax revenues. This is an exhibit. It's not exactly the same, but we review this every month. We are locking in what we have been seeing over the last couple of years as far as revenue increases, specifically in sales tax, income tax, and replacement tax. So we've gone ahead and taken those up based on the trends. You can see we've increased the budget by 10.6 million. Again, I want to bring into context, that there is inflation even on our general fund budget, which is more like last year was about 130 million. 4% inflation, that's 5 million. Kind of inflation is eating up about half that, those major tax revenues, right out of the gate. And then, as I mentioned previously as well, pensions, public safety pensions. Sounds like I'm picking on public safety tonight. I'm not doing that. Those pensions went up. The contribution calculation went up by 2.4 million from prior year. So between inflation and the pension increase, that's 7.4 million of the 10.6 roughly that we're taking it up. Next slide, please. Okay, so the citywide income statement. So this is the income side of our income statement. We'll show expenditures in a moment. Taxes, 10.6 million. Doesn't tie exactly to the previous exhibit. We don't list all of our tax items there. I'm referencing the dollar change, by the way. That's, you can see the budget, current or FY '24 budget versus '25 proposed dollar change, trying to explain the variances to council and community this evening. Intergovernmental revenue. Most of the intergovernmental revenue is related to borrowings from the state. So IEPA, State Revolving Fund, loans related to Locust Colton. So that's the majority of that is related to that. And then some recognition of ARPA cash that we put into deferred revenue, a balance sheet. Usually, we normally do cash accounting with the budget, but ARPA is a little different. So we're going to show the revenue hitting again. It's a little weird, but our auditors, we pushed it off in the balance sheet for that, showing the ARPA funds being recognized this year as well. 7.1 million increase in charges for services. That's the water rate increases. Everyone's aware of those, driving a lot of that. And 11.5 million increase in miscellaneous revenue. This is where we're capturing borrowing related to the water tower. So we're going to have to go external, not state related, not governmental related. We're looking at maybe doing a bond for that. We've been in discussion with our financial advisor within the last 2 weeks related to the long-term project and the shorter-term side of it, which includes this water tower. Next slide, please. So the expense side of the income statement for citywide expenditures. Am I doing okay on time, Amanda? Uh-oh. Okay. So salary, 6.3 million. I've mentioned, we've added 9 public safety, between last year's budget and this year's budget. We added another, deputy city manager, to our, structure. We've added one for water, the library. So some of that increase is made up of new people, but we also have, performance increases. We have a rating system within the city for classified employees, and you get rewarded and a raise based on how you perform. And then we have 11 union contracts, and we budget by person in our system. So it takes my salary and it assumes kind of an average increase for classifieds and applies that to every single person that's a classified. If you're in the union, it's going to apply the wage table to you according to the union contract. So it's a very specific budgeting process. $10.3 million related to contractuals. Contractuals are hired services, insurance, a lot of things go into that category. It can also be impacted by capital projects related to architectural engineering. And we were capturing a $1 million kind of offset in that category because historically we're coming in under, but in the last couple of years, that budget we've been narrowing it in. So we took that out this year. So that's kind of made an adjustment as well. Capital expenditures up by the 22.8, includes equipment, $5 million over for equipment over prior year. Again, fire department with that advancement of the engine and the ambulances. Other intergovernmental expense, most of this related to the public safety pensions. And then other expenditures is down. This is, I wanted to comment on this briefly. We had an accounting change related to the GMET, that's the Ground Emergency Management Transport federal program with for the fire department, ambulance billing. We used to bill at 100%, and then Medicare would come in and we would adjust the revenue that we receive, but we would call it an expense, a write-off. So now we're just adjusting it all revenue. We're just basically saying, we should have billed, based on a formula. And so we're adjusting the revenue and not hitting expense. So it's actually making our expenditures go down. But when we get to the general fund, you're going to see our revenue went down. It's going to be a bit more visible there. Next slide, please. So income statement for the general fund, our largest fund. So $143 million of the $330 million total budget. So same items really for, use of funds, use of reserves. I thought I was on expenditures already. So non-recurring, not use of reserves. We want to be cautious about how we classify those and when we use those reserves. Now we have reserves, we're very fortunate, and we have anomalies like this fire truck and ambulances. That to me is a classic use of reserves, but we want to be able to afford our base operations every year. So that's why we're kind of delineating kind of our non-recurring equipment is about $3 to $4 million over what it usually is. It's $9.6 million for the general fund. Usually averages about $5 million. Capital Improvement Fund, we're doing more in the terms of BCPA and the PD, taking care of those facilities. And the arena it's a little heavy on a subsidy this year, about usually estimate between $1 million, $1.5 million. It's about $500,000 over the average. So I'm considering those non-recurring. Taxes, we went through intergovernmental agreement or revenue, excuse me. There's a DECIO grant in there. Also recognition of some ARPA deferred revenue related to continuation of some ECD programs. the housing program. And then this charges for services went down by 1.4 million. That's that ambulance revenue. So instead of having more revenue and then some expense related to the write-offs, those, we're just considering those adjustments to revenue. Next slide, please. General fund expenditures. This is where I was going to reference that, we've gone through the salaries, the 9 public safety staff that were added and the union contracts and the increase of performance. Contractuals, we're spending more money here at the government center. They're fixing the elevators. You can see 500,000 for that. We split the maintenance here with the county, 3.2 million for capital expenditures. Again, increase for fire of 2.7 million. And then we have some reductions in our actual debt service. A lot of this is related to leases rolling off for the general fund. And then other intergovernmental expenses, that's the public safety increase of 2.4 million, really driving that $3.4 million increase. And then here you can see the adjustment downward in the expenditure category for the fire ambulance billing. Next slide, please. Now to set it up for next week. So we have almost $89 million in capital projects, 27% of our total budget. So there's a lot of going on, plan to be going on for next year. We have capital improvement, 10.9 million, almost $11 million, lots in parks, taking care of our facilities, taking care of what we have, advancing forward, some initiatives in IT, et cetera. State mineral fuel tax, $33 million combined with asphalt and concrete, 10 million, $33 million in streets. So next week, we'll have all the department heads going through all the line items for these projects, giving the community a sense of where their dollars are being put to use and how it will impact them directly. Next slide, please, and last detail slide. So how do we kind of put this $330 million budget into context? I tried doing this a little bit on the front end, and we'll narrow this down over the next few weeks. But capital projects, 88.9 million, as I mentioned, that's 27% of the budget. Adding together the state motor fuel tax and the 10 million for asphalt and concrete. And by the way, we're locking in about 7.2 million between local motor fuel tax and the 10% of home rule for asphalt and concrete. And so we're subsidizing the rest. Part of it's ARPA, so we're not having to subsidize the full 3 million, we being the general fund, I should say. So making up the difference, we know it's an initiative from council and the community, fix the roads. So we're having to find additional funds for those roads. And then some other highlights, and we'll go through more examples like this in the coming weeks, all the trash, everything. But some of the context, $14.7 million in public safety pensions, $15.1 million in equipment. Safety security, I said, was a primary focus of this budget with security cameras. We're putting some money towards an emergency ops center in the fire department. Civil unrest, natural disasters, having some redundancy here at the city, fire engine, 2 ambulances, I mentioned. So, I mentioned the public safety total budget of $70 million. Well, what is that really, how does that manifest itself? 89,000, this was from our audit last year. 89,000, there's over 89,000 in supported police and fire service runs in one calendar year. So, there's significant activity there. No one really kind of feels that until you need to feel it, so that's good, but that's a lot of money that's being spent on security for our community. 17,000 tons of trash is 34 million pounds, 675,000 visitors for parks, cultural, arts, library, golf attendees. So again, our ultimate goal is to be good stewards of the taxpayers' funds. We adopt this budget. What do we do from there? We do monthly budget reviews with our department heads. We talk about where the money's going. Is it going towards, what was the intent? And so it's not just, out of sight, out of mind. On the other side of this, there's a continual view of this, reporting to council, reporting to admin. And so that is a primary focus, ultimate goal, good stewards. Next slide, please. Last slide. So next steps, committee of the whole next week. We'll go through all the projects in detail by the department heads. And then we'll have another council update at the end of the month, reviewing just, different viewpoints of the budget, showing what information is available online, proposed budget presentation March 11th, and the public hearing on the 25th, and then final adoption in April. And one more slide. Any questions, comments? Sorry for going over.
Well, thank you, Scott, very much. I know that's, it's a lot of work, on the part of not only you, and your staff, but also, the wider city staff. So we definitely, look forward to continued discussions, about it. Um, so at this point, I'm gonna ask, council questions. Okay, Councilmember Bolin, Crumpler, and Motley. And keep in mind the time, so we have 20 minutes. Right?
I only have one question or clarification. You started talking about lumping, maybe that's the wrong word, state and local motor fuel tax, no? Just clarify.
If I did that, that was by mistake. We do not, so state motor fuel tax goes into its own fund. And so all those projects have to be authorized by the state. And then local fuel tax goes into the asphalt and concrete fund for our streets and sidewalk resurfacing programs.
Well, but you are somehow subsidizing the local, the asphalt concrete.
Yes, so our goal right now is $10 million per year, the current goal anyway, for asphalt and concrete. We're budgeting 4.2 million, I believe, in local motor fuel tax. Yes, and then our home rule sales tax is about 30 million that we're budgeting. So 10% of that go to asphalt and concrete too, so that's 7.2 million. So the rest is being subsidized by the general fund. This year, we're not doing a full $2.8 million transfer. It's somewhat less than that because we do have ARPA funds in there, et cetera. But we are doing a transfer in just to kind of get the process going and build that into our operating activity.
And the state motor fuel tax, that is going to be Fox Creek and Hamilton this year, next year, 10, I'm kidding. But that's a carryover too. I just want to make that clear. We're not adding that. It's been in the budget for several years and hopefully before I get off council. Thanks.
You're never getting off council. Okay, Councilmember Crumpler.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. And Scott, thank you so much for the presentation this evening. You know, you began by talking about working with departments and having them set priorities. And that's hard work, you know, in the best of all possible worlds, everybody would get all the funding that they've requested and the city would continue to flourish and grow. And I'm wondering, in this process this year, are there any departments that have figured out maybe how to prioritize and reduce their requests for annual funding? In a sense, maybe work leaner, smarter, I'm not sure that's the right word, but and still maintain a high standard of efficiency?
Do you want to start or you want me to? Well, Councilmember Crumpler, I can tell you that we are in the process of starting some of the lean initiatives and getting some of that off the ground. I cannot tell you I can certainly tell you there are departments that have reduced their ask. Whether or not it's as a result of implementing new processes, I cannot say for sure. I would look to Director Rathbun to see if he has any specific examples. There are several initiatives that we're hoping to get off the ground, but I don't have any that come to mind this year.
Well, most of the variability in the budget is related to projects, studies, and things of that nature. So, you know, you've got kind of a base of staff. And so part of, you know, what we in finance have to rely on is the departments prioritizing based on their specialization. So, you know, Kevin is a perfect example of that. You know, he's going to know, you know, which sewers and water, you know, and Ed's going to know which water mains need replaced. And then, you know, we have the meetings, you know, including administration to kind of vet and make sure that the prioritization at the department level is matching up with the prioritization at the admin level. And so I kind of reference it like this, some of that ringing of those accounts, I used that term before, it happens by default by just that process, as opposed to like, the only way we'd really reduce is that staffing number. It's really kind of a reallocation every year as to where they're going to be focused. And then some of the other variability within the budget that's difficult to determine is, natural events, like snow and ice. We've been very fortunate the last couple of years. We've been under in snow and ice. I think we have rock salt, that, we have a contract, but we're saving money there. And then even depending on the nature of the events, if it's a snow event or an ice event or somewhere in between, you're going to experience overtime or not overtime. So I guess I don't know if I'm answering your question really well, but there's a process in place where my expectation is that what you're asking about happens by default, because we're asking the departments to substantiate why they want this dollar amount, and then we're doing it in front of administration. And so, if there needs to be a reallocation of the dollars available, or it might be a determination of, we're fortunate enough to have these reserve dollars.
Right.
We want to try to address a lot of these items, this
Yeah.
year, and use those taxpayer money dollars that are sitting there. Let's put them to use. If it makes sense, if we need to do it, and we have the cash to do it right now, then let's execute it.
Hey, thank you.
Deputy City Manager Tyus, did you have anything to add to that?
Most of it actually, thank you. Most of it actually would have been related to some of what Scott said, and that it's built into the process and what you said at the beginning with direction from the city manager, where it's, if you need 3, don't ask for 5. And there is a very, very thorough process for I'll use the term defending what projects are being brought forward. It goes through a very, very thorough vetting process to where, honestly, a lot of times you end up, you may come forward with 5 projects, you may end up being able to do 1 or 2. So there's a very thorough process for that.
And I would say on top of that, we're building the process improvement component of it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I was really sort of thinking about not only, what each of you described, but also sort of a mindset in terms of thinking about if we don't need 5, let's not ask for 5. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Motley.
Hey, thank you too. I really appreciate it. And thank you for clarifying the carryover items. When we discussed this previously, I found that very helpful. And I think that would be helpful to delineate in the presentations going forward so that the public has the opportunity to see how much of this really involves putting off projects, I guess, or saying we're going to do something and then maybe a grant doesn't come through or whatever. And then as it continues to be pushed down year after year after year, that price tag keeps going up. So being able to delineate that in the presentation and just show what's new, what's carryover, I think would be very helpful. The second thing I think would be very helpful as we move forward is when we talk about things like asphalt and concrete, which are very important, I think we need to talk about them in the context of what are we actually buying with that. So based on some statistics, shown a few months ago related to miles paved, it looks like we are touching streets to repave about once every 56 years when the average lifespan of pavement is about half of that. So anyone can kind of see that that's not a really good ground gain, so to speak, in the progress toward getting our average condition up for streets and also sidewalks as well. So as we move forward with the budget process, I would love to see not just the spend, but how many miles we are getting for that, how many feet of sidewalk we are getting for that, so that we know, are we actually investing more to do less, or are we investing more in delivering better outcomes for the people who live here? The other thing is just, moving forward, I think it would be very helpful for us to try to figure out process-based costs for some of these things. so that we can get an idea of not just defending, do we need 3 or do we need 5, and talking about that in the context of staffing or anything else, but really having a more data-driven approach to kind of understand how many people do we need to deliver the services, not people so much, but labor hours, whether they're inside labor, outside labor, or whatever. I think the more rigor that can go around that, removing the subjectivity, I think everybody is going to build capability and build business acumen, and we'll be able to deliver better services to our community as a result. So this was very informative. I really appreciate the historical data. It's really interesting to see also too the difference between actual spend and budgeted spend. And I don't know what that is telling us or suggesting us, that there's such a big difference between what we actually spend and what we have in that budget. But it would be really interesting, I think, just at some point in the future to better understand that and how that could inform a more rigorous budgeting process where those two numbers are getting closer together.
One quick comment. I appreciate everything you said. One big driver of that is that project, especially the state motor fuel tax. That Councilmember Boland, I don't know how many years ago, before I was here, but that's the one project, I guess it's not just one, that gets rolled every year, really drives that variance in our budget, like between actuals and budget. Given some conversations that occurred, before the meeting, I talked to Chris Tomerlin, a budget manager, about FY24 projects. Most of the projects, other than state motor fuel tax, that are budgeted this year, most of them are being executed. So we've got a few that are getting delayed, that are getting rolled over, but I've always thought, I agree with you, that we probably should have a number, at least it's just a total out to the right in that summary schedule that says of the total for the current year, what's a rollover from prior year, just to have some context there. So yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Yes, thanks for this presentation. I too always appreciate some context, and Director, as you were starting off, I really appreciated the context you gave us in terms of how much of this budget is being dedicated to the various buckets, if you will. So correct me if I'm off here, but I thought, because I was trying to take notes pretty fast, I thought you were saying that about a quarter of this budget is going to public safety. Is that about right? And another quarter of it was going to streets and sewers. Is that right?
A little under.
Little less than that?
A little under for public safety and a little over for projects. So to get, like, public safety is about 21% of the budget.
Gotcha.
Projects is 27%, but you're pretty much there.
So between them, I think you said 48% or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, so roughly half, a little bit less than half, is going to public safety and streets and sewers. What's the other half going to, in broad stroke terms?
Well,
You mentioned something like public well-being, and I'm wondering what constitutes public well-being.
yeah, and next week, I think, well, not next week, the week after, we'll split up the general fund by what we refer to as functions. So we're going to show parks. So like
Okay.
when you start adding in the gross budget for parks, because they charge a lot, or not a lot, but they charge for their services for pools and all those programs. So their net is, it's not quite half, but their gross budget's very sizable. And you have the arena budget. I'm talking about the entertainment side, the BCPA. So, all these, you're talking about the gross expenditure side, not what they net after revenues. We have to budget based on gross expenditures. So those numbers get pretty lofty. And then, with benefits, as an example, not all of the benefits are health insurance, but we have $17.7 million in benefits citywide. So even if we do half of that as health insurance, there's another $8 million in the insurance fund. So we're showing benefits twice, $8 million, so it's it's doubling up. So it can add up in a hurry, but I'll provide more context related to that in a couple of weeks. I think especially with the general fund, which is almost half the budget, by function, it'll show the public safety and parks and
I would really appreciate that because while I do appreciate hearing the context as far as public safety and streets and sewers, I think that all of that is helps to provide a bigger picture. But I think frequently we hear from our public commenters how interested they are to hear what we're doing about streets and sewers and public safety. And so it's really heartening to me to hear that almost half of our budget is being dedicated to those very items.
yeah, and that's, and the streets and sewers, and water, the number that we're referencing, that's just the project. So that doesn't include like the operating side, our directors and, the people that are out fixing the
Like the
lines.
day-to-day work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's quite sizable as well. I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but that's multiple millions of dollars as well as just from the operations side. We're just talking about capital projects with the 88 million.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. So Scott, thank you very much. This is the first installment of many. So thank you so much for all your work, and every year it keeps getting better. So we really appreciate it. Explaining budgets that can seem very complicated, but making it digestible for the average citizen. So thank you. Let's see. Okay, so I think we are going to go to city managers, actually deputy city managers discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. And I believe I just have a video of upcoming events tonight.
Get ready to dive into a world of fresh flavors and hidden treasures. The February Indoor Farmers Market is coming up this Saturday, February 17th at Grosinger Motors Arena. Step into a vibrant tapestry of local goodness with something for everyone. The market is open from 9 a.m. till noon. Then mark your calendars for an adventure-filled First Friday on March 1st. It's time to shamrock and roll. Keep your eyes peeled as you stroll through downtown for hidden shamrocks. Find one and you'll win some rockin' prizes from local businesses, galleries, and restaurants. Join us as downtown Bloomington comes alive with flavor, fun, and fantastic prizes.
That's all I have.
Well, that is awesome. We're gonna go on to mayor's discussion. I don't have anything. Can the mayor get a video or something? I mean, what is going on in this place? Council members, do you have a video or anything? I don't know. Councilmember Crumpler?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one comment. About 2 weeks ago, the city of Bloomington sign at the corner of Fort Jesse and Tawanda Barnes was damaged by a flying Tesla. And it was reported, I have pictures of it flying over and apparently landed on one of my neighbor's fences. And I contacted the city, and within a week, they had folks out there and repaired that landscaping. And I just want to thank the city for that work. I got text from my neighbors saying, wow, it's already repaired, and so just a little good news I'd like to share with the community. Thank you.
Awesome. Councilmember Boland?
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Oh, sure. Let's make them, and then
Oh.
second by Councilmember Dannenberger. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. And thank you to the young people from Wesleyan for coming to this meeting. And I hope it was everything you hoped for.